if you're being inventive, you shut off all your analytic and critical faculties and let go. And the most surprising things come out. Sometimes they're good.
Agnes de Mille, with astounding artistic innovation, has revolutionized the entire shape and style of American dance. She introduced laughter, gutsy American laughter, into the prim and formal opera houses and concert halls of this country.
Mr. Mille, it's nice to be talking to you in the comfort of your own living room. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a
us.
very great delight to have you here.
Well, flowers are especially nice.
They cover up a multitude of you know what.
When you were asked to do this and told that it was for archival interest and so forth, you said, I think to someone, it's everything I have to say is in the books. God knows you've written a lot of them. Does it seem to you ever that your ultimate fame, given the ephemeral nature of the dance, may lie in your books more than in the dance?
Well, I think given the ephemeral nature, probably. I don't know. I don't think that my books are immortal or anything like that, but they do provide quite a record of a certain time in American dance history, and I don't think anyone else has covered it. I rather industriously did.
You're known to be not just a good writer for a choreographer, but a good writer for on anybody's standards. Did writing come easily to you, naturally? It
came more easily than choreography.
It did?
I mean, it sounds so absolutely conceited and ridiculous and insensitive to say that it is easier than choreography. But choreography is done with sweating bodies in a room, and they're all human people. They get bored easily, they get tired all the time, but when they naturally do in my rehearsals. And you have to pay attention to them as human beings and personalities. The words never carry on like that. You know, you can kick them around forever. But I can also do it privately. And I'm very, very shy. I don't like to be watched with what I'm doing because I'm so uncertain, and that is really true. I'm so uncertain that I think it's a great failing. Some artists just knew they were God-given and that they were destined to be great. No matter how hard it was, they would be great. Martha Graham was one. But I never knew anything of the sort. I just wanted to be, which is just egotistic.
Yeah, but you didn't have that great confidence that...
Oh, I had none. So that the mistakes I made used to make me sick. And it cramped me and hampered me from working. I have to have absolutely private rehearsals, and when I started in England, I used to make the pianist turn her back to me so she wouldn't watch me alone moving.
The pianist had to face away?
Yeah, because I was so embarrassed by what I was doing. I felt my way through.
That is surprising.
And she loved me. I mean, she wished me well, and she understood me, and she was sensitive. Couldn't stand it.
It wasn't an enemy, you just didn't want anybody watching.
Couldn't stand it. Yeah. The critical, that they'd say, that's good, that's not good, because I didn't know.
That's surprising for somebody who's accomplished as much as you have to know that it was, in that sense, hard for you.
Well, but it still is.
But the writing itself, can you point to any reason why you had a good background or whatever to make you a good writer?
Well, my father was a writer, and a pretty good one. He was a playwright, a very successful playwright. He was the playwright for David Belasco. And his father, Henry de Mille, the father of Cecil and William, had been Belasco's first collaborator and had died young, though, very young, 36, I think. He died of a bad oyster that you did in those days. There was no help. But he told Father not to go into the theater, not to write. So Father was a civil engineer at Columbia University, and he did 3 years of that and said, oh, well, the hell with that, I'm going to write plays. and then he went to Brandon Matthews, and he wrote a play. And interestingly enough, this is way back, about 1902, 1903, he wrote a play about racial tensions, and in this case it was between the American Indians and the whites, and it was a smash hit on Broadway called Strongheart, with Robert Edison playing Sawangataha, and made up Red, and oh, it was heartbreaking, because of course he couldn't have his woman. And that was Father's start.
That was Strongheart?
Strongheart. And but then Father's greatest hit was in 1911 with a play called The Woman. And that was a play about a woman, well, it was a play about political corruption, and except that it was about railroads in those days, and of course they have no place at all in our culture, our pattern, but just substitute oil or something. It is absolutely timely now, today, that same play. But it is about, the main theme is about a woman who's had an affair, and she and the man decide that it's not good, so they bury it. And 10 years later, she marries a man who's a rising figure in politics, and he discovers it, and his enemies discover it, and he forgives her. Well, I tell you, New York rocked. The church and everybody said, this kind of condonement and permissiveness is just intolerable. It's going to break up society. With that, Father went to Hollywood.
I don't blame him.
But he had a very great sense of literate English and literary English. And we were told to speak correctly and speak exactly. He did, and he demanded it of his two daughters. And we always heard people speaking exactly as they meant to speak. My grandfather, Henry George, wrote exquisite English.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah. And in a field that isn't known for its exquisite English, I guess.
Well, it was economics.
Economics, yeah.
And that's generally very fuzzy.
Yeah.
With loose, I think that's one of the main troubles with Marx. But his terms are all, he uses them interchangeably. He's not concise, he's not clear, and he's not, consistent. George was.
Yeah.
And I was trained that way. And then I went to college in California, UCLA, and I had the great good luck for $22.50 a year to get marvelous English teachers, very great ones. They're known. And these people put a love of the language in me, in my conscience, so that I read intelligently and read, well, with discrimination and love. And Alfred Longale, who was the head of the English department, said, you've got to listen to the sounds of English. You've got to listen to pavement, window. These are ordinary words, but listen to the beautiful sound. And I began to for the first time.
So your ear was trained as well as your
Yes.
brain.
And he would read lines of Shelley, lines of Keats, and so forth, say, now listen to the sound of it as opposed to the meaning and how one feeds on the other, one supplies the other. Well, I thought those were very clever young men that wrote that way. Very clever.
Sorry, my mind went back to the church being opposed to a play about forgiveness. I like that.
Oh, yes, it was fine. There was a real controversy.
Did dance come easily to you?
No, because, well, I was a dancer. I was born a dancer. I don't know why. It didn't come out of the family much, except I had a maternal grandmother who was a dancer, but all she could do was waltz, of course. However, she was an indefatigable waltzer. But that's neither here nor there, really. The thing is that I did want to dance, and I just got the bug when I was a child.
Why? Were you taken at an impressionable age to see
5 years old, which is, well, quite impressionable, to see Adelina Genet. And she was this great Danish dancer, exquisite ballet dancer. And I went home and said, Mother, I've got to be a ballet dancer. And she said, you know, you don't wear lovely, fluffy skirts like that. You'll be in a short practice costume, and you'll have to work every day, and when you come home from school, you can't play, and you can't loll around, you can't do anything. You have to go to the bar and work, and I said that would be simply wonderful. But I wasn't allowed. Then I saw Anna Pavlova, and I nearly died. I went home and wept with sheer excitement.
Was it something strictly about her, or just that the idea of dancing appealed to you that much?
Both. But she was a magic woman, and I know I've heard young ballet students, people from the New York City Ballet and so forth, see their old films, say, well, I can do what she did. I could when I was my second year, third year ballet student. Of course they can.
Can?
Yes. But who cares? When Anna Pavlova entered the stage, everybody's metabolism altered. And you had such an excitement. Now, Callas had that. Very few people.
Does it come through on the films of Pavlova?
Not 1 second of it, and it's a close-up where she smiles. One, you get a flash. No,
I'm certainly
it doesn't
sorry I
come
didn't
through.
see her.
But you see, then it set the form, and I was still not allowed to have lessons because Mother had the really, well, it was at the age where children were not tampered with. Their God-given instincts, their God-given talents were allowed free rein. She was John Dewey, you see. And all just, well, he was a Georgist, so naturally she was a subscriber. And she believed in this. It was the Isadora Duncan School, Rue St. Denis. You danced. You went out on the grass and danced, and I went out on the grass and danced till a live oak leaf stuck in my feet. But I remember I had cactus in them too. But it was, all the neighbors said, this is beautiful. It was very pretty. And I had a light in my face and so forth. As dancing, it was raw material.
You weren't allowed to have a bar and mirror in the house?
Nothing. My sister, by the grace of God, my sister's ankles fell in steps when she was about 8. And I and she went to a ballet teacher. And I remember I worked so hard, just pushing and sweating, that I fainted in class. Bang on the floor. But it was the real business.
You knew it's what you wanted.
Russian ballet, imperial Russian ballet. But I wasn't allowed to practice much. Father just wouldn't have it. And of course, Mother wouldn't if he wouldn't, because he said she's got to do her schoolwork. So I was editor of the school paper and captain of the school tennis team, and straight A and everything, and I also did the dancing.
On the side? Or,
Yeah.
or the other things on the side, maybe.
No, I did them through all the lunch periods,
Oh,
you see. No recesses. That was done. Then I went home and practiced.
Elsa Lanchester, the actress on a show I once did, she apparently studied with Isadora.
Oh, no, I
and
didn't know that.
referred to her as that untalented old bag of beans.
Well,
Would you go along with that?
well, I didn't study with her. I didn't know her. She must have been elderly when Elsa Lanchester knew her. She didn't have a very, it wasn't a hard technique. It wasn't a technique you could easily teach. It came so deeply from within and from the mind, from the point of view. And of course it was taken by all the amateurs because they could handle it. Badly, mind you. But they could do it. They were full of freedom and spiritual feeling for beauty, and it was abominable. And that's what I think dancing got part of its very lousy name in America. Because everybody's sister went off in cheesecloth and cavorted. It was just inexcusable, romping around.
Was Genet as thrilling to see as,
Yes.
as Pavlova?
I saw her younger, you see. She was a greater technician. She was one of the greatest of all. If I use technical terms, can you follow me?
Sure.
Well, she did
I'll try.
Entre dix.
She did what?
Entre dix.
Well, there's your answer.
That's 5 crossings in the air.
Oh, yes.
I think Baryshnikov could. I mean, if he was really warmed up and told to do it.
Why would it be called 10 if it's 5?
That's the way it is.
Oh.
Entre quatre is just boom, boom. That's two crossings.
that's-
It's one for each leg.
4 is 2 and 10 is 5.
Yeah, but you see, when you do entrechat trois, you do bum, bum, and that one hangs in the air and doesn't beat.
Yeah.
What do you care?
Well, it's important.
Not to anyone. And I'll tell you something. There is another little step called an entrechat royal, and that was made up for Louis XIV because he just couldn't do that. He was too fat, too something. His costume was too heavy. And so he did bum, bum. And there are no crossings, but he did do a beat. And the naked eye, when you do it neatly, can't see the difference. It goes too fast.
It's just that instead of da-da-dum.
That's right.
Ah.
Now, when
Another one?
Baryshnikov or Nureyev or something goes up in the air, they really go up, and then they take their time and do these things. Then the audience goes mad.
I wonder what the world record is for entrechat.
I would say 10.
Must be.
But Janet did it, and that's unusual for a woman. She also could do 3 turns in the air. Very unusual.
3 turns in the air.
Yeah.
Really?
Bum, 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 bum.
Before coming down.
That's very unusual. And her feet, she never wore stiffening in her toes. They were always soft.
I thought you had to.
Oh, they never did in the 19th century.
No.
They were developed. The strength was in the foot, in the instep. It was like Brooklyn Bridge. You know, the arch.
How did anybody ever come up with the idea of dancing
On the toes?
On the toes. It's so against nature.
It isn't, because
It isn't?
all children do it. Every little girl in the world gets up on her toes
Instinctively, you mean?
instinctively, and just the way every little boy stands on his head. It is not dancing.
Yeah.
They're just getting up on their toes and saying, look at me. Our little boy goes the other way around, upside down.
Speaking of little, your memories of your childhood and you've written about are so vivid. It's almost as if you kept a daily notebook or something. Is it just that your memory is so good, or your childhood was so
Well,
vivid? In the
I
writing,
haven't-
did you find that things came out that you didn't know you remembered until you started?
Sure.
Yeah.
What I don't remember is people's faces, but that's unusual for a visual person. I don't remember their names. So when I meet somebody, I do remember that they're man or woman. But that's absolutely all, and it is embarrassing and humiliating to everybody.
You'd like to cure that, would you? That everybody
I
has
don't
it.
think I have time now, do you?
No, but there are memory courses that teach you those things. I don't know how they work, but might be.
I remember what they say.
Well, that's probably more important.
I don't think so. It just is different.
Were you unusually, do you think, moved by or attuned to nature with a capital N as a kid?
Probably. Although I think all children are. But they get blunted so fast by our civilization. I don't know what the street children are attuned to. They can't smell. They can't hear with all the din of the confusion going around.
Yeah.
I don't know what their memories will be. The first time they had Coke?
Probably. Not the beverage.
No.
Have drugs been a big thing in the theater and dance world as
I
far as
don't
you can
know.
remember?
I don't know. I would say not.
I mean, there were many cocaine addicts in what you might call the old days. We read about them from
No, it was ether.
even in the 19th century.
Ether.
Ether.
They all had, the girls of the opera, their lives were so appalling. They used to get their extra high on by sniffing ether. And that's, of course, how it was discovered as an anesthetic.
Really? What, would they do it before performance in order to get...
Probably not. No, I don't think so, because it makes you sleepy.
Yeah.
But I think after the performance.
Are there any stimulants that help you dance?
Well, I've never taken any. And I don't know. I don't drink. Oh, I mean, excuse me, I certainly do. But I didn't used to.
Yeah.
Not, and of course I don't drink before when I'm performing in any way at all, speaking or anything. Now, for instance, it's morning now, and I haven't had anything yet.
And you never ate yet. When you mean you didn't drink at a time, you mean not a drop?
Not a
ever,
drop
for any reason?
at the beginning. And I never smoked. Ever. I haven't. And I think it's lethal.
It's one of the shocking things when you go backstage or go to the ballet rehearsal or something, or go to a class, And they usually announce the break as a cigarette break.
I don't
In fact, I
understand
know dancers
it.
who got to smoking because it was always called a cigarette break, and so they felt they should be smoking. So they
Well, I don't understand how they do it.
Baryshnikov smokes.
With the demands they make on their lungs.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't understand it.
Has to make a difference. Were you conscious of being the granddaughter of a famous man when Henry George?
Oh yes, oh yes, because the followers of Henry George are idolaters, and they treated both of us, my sister and I, as holy relics. And when I went to Europe, Europeans of various nations would say, "Will you take your hat off so we can see the shape of your head?"
To see if it resembled.
Well, it didn't.
Oh.
Not inside or out.
Yeah. What was his daughter, your mother, like?
Well, she was an idolater too, but she was very petite, and she was red-haired like her father and blue-eyed, with a kind of zany wit. Really, she was the only member of the family, as far as I know, that was really outrageous, and she was an equal blend. We were speaking of cliches. She used cliches a lot, to my father's dismay and my impatience, but then it would be immediately followed with absolutely outrageous flights of imagination. And that was titillating. She had a willpower of iron. I've never seen anything stronger in my life. Not a British soldier. Nothing. And it was the last thin red line.
Not intimidated.
By anything.
So she had a confidence that you did not inherit.
But I think it was not justified. I think she had it because her daughter had got to be great. And that, in a way, is not very healthy.
What became of your sister?
She died, unfortunately. She died of cancer 3 years ago.
Was she in the arts?
No, she'd gone on the stage and was a great success when I was a failure. But then she got out of the arts. She worked for George Cukor in a stock company with Betty Davis. And Betty got ahead. Well, first of all, Betty had gifts that Margaret didn't have. But Margaret had 3 lines and Betty had 1 in a stock play. And there was a place, leading lady got sick and they had to get a substitute. And they didn't put Margaret in, although she outranked Betty, because they thought 3 lines is hard to replace. 1 line isn't. So Betty went ahead and had her chance.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
That's the story there.
But she could look back on the time when she was ahead of Betty Davis for a time.
Well, it was, I think, 4 days. But Margaret then married a moving picture producer and became a Hollywood matron, and with a Beverly Hills home and so forth. And that was a very strange life, believe me. That was in the big MGM period. And I just didn't know, I didn't understand what these people were about. I used to go to parties because Margaret was awfully generous with me and always took me places. But I would go, this is my sister Agnes, she dances. And I didn't mind, I never minded that. I used to sit there with my eyes just on swivets, watching these strange people, Dolores Del Rio bending over Louis Mayer with the rubies clanking on her exquisite bosom as she leaned toward him. And then the next beautiful person, not Greta Garbo, but everybody else, fawning, making love. Well, this elderly, rather stout man, a Jewish patriarch, just took it. What kind of a background is this? What is it?
It's
Zoo!
life trying to be art or something. I don't know what it is. When you said not Garbo, do you mean you think she's not the most beautiful, or that she just didn't
The
happen to be
most
there?
beautiful, she wasn't ever there.
Oh, I see.
Never. She didn't lean either. And she
lean.
never clanked rubies, I'm sure of that.
I wonder if she could dance.
Oh, I wouldn't think so. Well, we saw her playing a ballerina in Grand Hotel. And I'm here to tell you she couldn't move.
Really? That you could tell from her that
Of
she had
course. One gesture, Oh, she could, no.
You,
No,
you knew that was no ballerina.
that was no, she wasn't a dancer, period. Didn't matter.
No. She did all right without it, I guess. Your mother made clothes, some of which are in museums.
Well, her mother was a remarkable seamstress. My grandmother used to say, sewn with the red blood of time, which if you've ever had a needle in your hand, you know exactly what that means. And Mother was taught by her mother, and Mother could use a sewing machine, the old-fashioned Singer type, a little portable one. Well, it was like a wizard the way I would say, the way she got sew up something and she'd buy patterns and spread them on the floor on top of the material and go around with pins sticking out from lips, eyelids, I don't know what, and pin them all and cut them to pattern and sew them, and then I had a very ugly, nice dress. But when I was a baby, Mother used to make all my clothes hand sewn, and they are exquisite works of art. And I gave them to the city of New York.
Vanishing art, probably.
Oh, it's done now.
Gone, yeah.
I mean, no garment is finished. I don't know about men's. I don't know how they're tailored. I haven't looked to see. That looks rather good.
It's German.
There you are.
Maybe that's why.
You see? But here, you buy something for a mere $150 or something or other, and it doesn't have a seam finished. It's raw material. It doesn't have a hem. It doesn't have a placket. I'll bet you don't know what a placket is.
No.
All right, doesn't matter.
Placket.
But it was absolutely necessary, and it doesn't have buttonholes. They make slits, and they finish them off with. It's rotten. Yeah. And I was trained to do it right, so I know. And I was trained also to embroider correctly, and not the kind of embroidery that goes in the Queen's robes or church garments, but just this side of it.
So if you had to, you could turn out costumes.
Mother used to split her silks, and she used to.
What does that mean?
Was to get a silk thread so fine that it would take one thread of the material, one thread, and then she would embroider with that. Minute.
That is something.
And she never was without sewing. But I'll tell you, this I think may be interesting to you. When I had this stroke, you see, everybody said, well, now you're a dancer and you can't walk easily, you can't do all these things. How dreadful because you were a dancer. Au contraire, it's easier for me because I know how long it takes to rebuild muscles, how long it takes to recondition. And so I never expected, I was never impatient. And what I had to do, I knew would take years, and it has taken years. But I said to my husband, it's because I'm a dancer. I was trained at the bar. He said, no, it goes earlier than that. You learned this at your mother's knee, sewing.
Sewing.
Very patiently, and every time we sat down, there was a piece of sewing. And all summer long, Margaret and I learned to stitch, and we read aloud H.G. Wells' History of the World.
You did?
So Mother was a great one for saving. She saved everything, string, rubber bands, paper. Well, you probably know this type of woman. She had in boxes, I now find boxes of embroidery, boxes of laces, boxes of ribbons, and I did. When she died, I found old paper, old string. Well, but Mother always also saved time. I forget why, but she did. We didn't just say our prayers, for instance, Our Father. We said it in French. Now that saved, you see, because if we said it in French, we practiced French at the same time. Notre Père qui est aux cieux.
In later life, did that stand you in good stead when you could say to a costumer, this costume is the...
Yes, it does.
And they say,
yes.
well, what do you know about sewing?
They don't, but they look it. I know just as much as they do. I can't fit.
Can't fit?
No.
That's another
Mother
art, is
could.
it?
Oh, well, that's tailoring.
When did the family move to California, and why?
Well, Father he'd had some failures. So he was sort of on a dry run and feeling very disheartened and very discouraged, and Cecil was out there. And he kept saying, come on out, Bill. It's a marvelous opportunity and it's lovely. So Father said, why not? And, well, I don't think he did. Mother said, why not? And she said, go on out. And it'll just be for a few months, and it'll be so good for the children's colds. And I remember that so well. and Father never came back. And we stayed for 12 years. And then Mother and Father got divorced, to my great shock, and Mother came east with the two of us. I was out of college. I just graduated, the day after graduation.
That was a shock to you. You saw no signs that they might get divorced?
It was so gradual, so gradual. And she told me, she said, do you want to read a love letter, a real love letter? And she gave me a letter that my father had written her when they'd been married 9 years. Oh, yes. No, more than that. I'd been 10.
No special occasion? Just.
They were separated very briefly, and Father had poured himself out, and it was very passionate and very graphic. Not graphic the way people write today, but I mean it was graphic for then. And I had hysterics because I suddenly saw what had happened. I couldn't believe that this, if you've been married 10 years, for goodness sakes, you know what you've got, presumably. But what I didn't realize was that Father was trying. And he was a writer, and so he didn't really feel these things, I think. He was forcing himself. He did try. He was in love with Mother at the beginning. And anyway, it was a terrible trauma for me, and it was worse for my sister, I think, who was younger. She was 3 years younger.
Is there any generalization you can make from it about marriage and love?
Oh my goodness, how do you generalize about marriage?
Wrongly, I suppose.
Each marriage is separate, each different. I think you can stay married if you want to stay married. And I think the main thing is, these days, do you like the person? Are you delighted with the person? Is it interesting for you to be with him or her? Now, my husband and I have quarreled as well as the best, I can promise you. And there have been things between us that I thought were insurmountable. But when I knew he was coming home for dinner, I thought, well, he's a son of a bitch, and I think he's hopeless. But he's coming for dinner. Now, you see, that you can't get over.
Yeah.
And I never felt that with anybody else.
Your father's brother, Cecil, was not the successful one at first, was he?
He wasn't successful at all. He was a rather poor actor, and Father gave him parts in his plays, and he was little brother. And then he was a playwright, but he's supposed to have written a play called The Music Master, I think. The Return of Peter Grimm. Maybe you've heard of it. David Warfield played it. Well, he didn't put his name on it. Belasco did. And the story about that is, it's so murky. Cecil never told the truth about any of those things. Sometimes my aunt, Constance, did. And as far as I can make out, Belasco stole it. And Cecil never forgave him. But what Cecil did by way of vengeance was to steal Belasco. He produced the Belasco office in California, in the Paramount lot. He became Belasco, all this grandiose manner, which is the later Cecil, not the beginning Cecil, was just simply pure fustian and pure Belasco. He was a Belasco production.
He just took his personality in exchange.
Absolutely. And then he became the great Mr. DeMille. Now, Cecil was gifted. Don't think he wasn't. He was very gifted, and he was enormously charming, and he was stimulating and exciting, and I never saw him in my life, even when I was very mad at him, that he gets all your adrenaline going, and he was charming. He could be hard as, I don't know anyone who could be as hard, and he was ungenerous about rights, about anything like that, but he would make the public gesture of, oh, this poor little old lady, put her on the payroll, see that she gets $5 a week from now till Christmas. You know.
He made sure that was publicized, you mean?
That I don't know.
Oh.
I don't think so. But then he would be appalling to a son-in-law. Now, about Cecil, it's rather interesting. He had one blood daughter and 3 adopted children, Catherine DeMille being among them. She became Catherine Quinn, Mrs. Tony Quinn. every one of them married, and every single in-law called him Mr. DeMille to the day of his death.
Mr. DeMille?
Mr. DeMille.
Did he insist on that, or was that just the
It
effect he had on people?
It was done. And his staff called him Mr. DeMille. Sometimes, they never said CB. These stories about CB, we're ready when you are CB, I think that would have cost the man his job.
Too intimate.
Now we were, oh yes, we called him Uncle C.
Yeah.
But any one of our friends would have called him Mr. DeMille.
Was it W.C. Fields, was it Catherine's daughter or child that drowned in W.C. Fields?
Absolutely. It was a reflecting pond under the lilies. And the child was left. It was a boy of I think he was just over a year, Christopher. I never saw him. And the boy had been left with a cleaning girl while Catherine went off to the hairdresser. And the cleaning girl didn't look at the baby too much, and suddenly she was aware that what baby wasn't there. She ran all over the place, couldn't find him, and then let Mr. DeMille know up on the first big house on the hill. And Mr. DeMille immediately notified the night watchman and the police because he was afraid of kidnapping. And he got his gun, I think. You know, they always had guns. My father and Cecil never, just the way you have an ashtray. And there was some reason. And they were both good marksmen. Well, he went off and they began looking, really looking, and they got the gardener to look, and the police came and they were looking, and then they notified the father. They couldn't reach Catherine. They didn't know where she was. She was sitting under a hairdryer. They got Tony, and Tony was half insane because he loved the boy so.
Anthony Quinn.
Yes. And then the gardener went to the pond, the first neighbor's pond, and pulled the lily pads back with his rake, and there was the boy lying on the bottom. And they have movies of that little body being taken out of the pond and Cecil wrapping it in a towel, and Tony collapsed. Then they got a hold of Mrs. DeMille. I don't know where she was.
Movies of this? Excuse me.
Newsreel.
Oh, newsreel. Oh, yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
And because it's been a matter of hours now, and Aunt Constance went to the hairdressing parlor and got a hold of Catherine, and she took her home, but not to the scene of horror.
Yeah.
And Tony was just devastated with grief. Catherine was pregnant with a second child, and Tony went off to Mexico to get over his grief, leaving Catherine.
Gee, what a story.
Well, Cecil didn't put a kindly construction on that departure. You see, Cecil couldn't stand male competition. And Father got around it. Although he was the older brother, Cecil treated him as, well, one of his retainers, and Father accepted it.
Fields apparently was very moved by that and drained the pool or had it paved over or something.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, then Cecil bought the house. It's part of the DeMille establishment, you see.
It's DeMille Drive now, isn't it?
Yeah, what it always was.
What was it even then?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But the house is now where they do the business offices of the DeMille estates and so forth.
Agnes, once you made it clear what career you were going to have, or at least what you were going to pursue, were you then encouraged by the family?
Mother. But Father not. Father, but you see, Father at that point, I was out of college. I handed him a cum laude in English, and so he was gratified by that. Then he decided to get a divorce, and his mind was so taken up with his own troubles and problems that he didn't bother with me. He said, well, go ahead.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead. Now, it was very hard, because at that point, the Schuberts were riding high, and not that they've ever been out of power, but they were absolutely, totally in control of the musical theater of New York. And I couldn't get a job anywhere. There I was, rather heavy. I was 20 years old. I was too old, really, to get started. I looked sort of mussy. And I would go into these offices. Archie Selwyn, I remember. And he said, you want to be a dancer? You don't look like one. I said, well, I am, though. And he said, well, what kind of a dancer? I said, I'm a comedian. He said, you haven't made me laugh yet. Well, no reply. And then he said, with a finger, excuse me, Dick Cavett.
That's quite right.
He said, you're too fat. Well,
The
you
thigh
went
over the
right
upper.
way up.
Too fat.
And I was. But the dean of letters and science didn't do things like that. And my eyes were just out of my head, and I took affront. The Selwyn's had been great friends of my uncle and my father and all that. Well, of course, it's half of Goldwyn's name. His name was Goldfish, as you know.
That's right.
And then he changed it because of Edgar Selwyn. But Archie was the brother, and he was producer too. But things like that would happen, and all they do would shock me. I'd go home quivering, and they weren't used to it, and I certainly wasn't. Believe me, there were no companies, none. There was the Metropolitan Opera House. One doesn't talk about that. It was so bad, but there was nothing else. Just dancing for movies, in front of movies.
Yes. I saw a movie last year of you dancing.
Of me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear.
You don't like the idea, but you don't like your film record?
Well, there's only one.
That's
It's
the
called
one.
Ballet Class.
That's the one, yeah.
Very bad. I tried to get my name taken off it.
You did?
I did, and I went to Walter Wanger, who made it, and said, please take my name off it. I'll give you back the money, although I needed it. And he said, nope. And then he said, the name DeMille's been on many bad pictures before this.
Why do you think it's bad?
A, it is. B,
Aside from that.
well, B, it's not sensitively done.
Mm.
And I was, hoping for a little jewel.
Yeah. Turned out to be not what you wanted. It
No.
often happens on film, doesn't it?
Well, it's not effective. The only thing I think it shows two things very clearly. One, that I could make a gesture and make it tell.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to do that. And I had a sort of staccato delivery that was comic. I could nail it.
Yeah.
But the other thing was that my technique was absolutely faulty. It was dreadful. And with that, seeing that picture, I packed off to England and enrolled with Mary Rombe and said, please teach me. And she took me apart, limb by limb.
Did she think you were too fat and other things as well?
Oh, yes. Oh, and she was graphic. Those great buttocks, that great bosom.
What were you supposed to do about those?
Starve, I think. Work harder.
And if you hadn't made that film and been
Oh, no.
disappointed in it, you
Well,
wouldn't have
also,
done that.
going to England was a very good thing for me to do, but it also got me away from my mother, who was really very, very possessive.
Mm-hmm.
By this time, she'd taken the full responsibility. She'd taken the whole brunt of everything. She ate me. She married me.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she just absolutely moved in. I lived with her to begin
It was
with.
as if you were
I was
married to her, your mother.
Absolutely, I couldn't.
Oh, I see.
And
I thought you meant
every time I got a boy that I was serious about,
Yeah.
she didn't mind me having suitors. She liked that, as long as they didn't get close to me. But when I found somebody that influenced me, she knew it. Oh, she knew with instinct, the instinct of an animal, and she fought. I didn't let her meet Walter Prude, my husband, except once. We just let him meet her, and then he went off to war, so he was gone until after we were married. Then she accepted him as a son-in-law.
Mm-hmm. What else specifically was wrong with you? I was looking down because, who was it? Was it Marie Rambert who said that your ankles were, or from the ankle, you only had it from the ankles down, or?
Well, my ankles are very good, but she said your feet have the touch of a great pianist's feet, a great pianist's hands on the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
The touch of her feet on the floor is like a great pianist's touch on the keyboard. She thought my footwork was superb. And I did have a sense of touch to the floor, which was sensitive. And of course, my acting. But I had stiff spine, my arms were stiff, I didn't have easy play of the limbs. No, I had a good foot. I don't know, have I ever done this?
I don't think so.
Rather indecent.
Gee, I wish I could do that.
Now that's a dancer's foot.
That really is. What tells me that it is? The arch, the...
Yeah, sure. But the thing is, well, there you are.
That's
and it's
right.
only one side these days.
That's right. Your stroke was on the...
And that's the left foot.
Your stroke was
right
on the
one
left
like
side
that.
of the brain then?
Yes, over here.
Yeah. Had it been on the other side, what would you have been without?
Well, this should have controlled speech. And the
That's what I thought.
blessed miracle was that my speech was spared.
Mm-hmm.
It was impaired, but it was spared.
Yes.
No, the other side, it would have meant coordination and memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would have had speech, but the memory would have been terribly disturbed.
Yeah. Does anyone know why you had a stroke?
Yes. And I've been wanting to introduce you to the head of neurologist of New York Hospital.
I'd like that.
And because, well, not to talk about me, but to talk about his subject, which is it's a new science, and it's going to open the world.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, what happens, but I would rather not talk about it because I'm not expert enough.
But it isn't some easy answer like if you'd eaten less bacon or fat or
Well,
in
if
your
I,
life or
it was
some...
my high blood pressure. The pressure got so high that an artery burst, a small one. I don't know, a vein or something, but anyway, there was a real hemorrhage. Now, where am I? The right side?
Yeah.
No, it was the left side.
Yeah.
In what they call the thalamus, which is the inner chamber part of the brain. And he said there was a hemorrhage like a large walnut. My husband, who saw the picture, said it was like half the size of the palm of his hand. That's massive.
Gee.
And what they didn't know then was that when they saw the x-rays, that it stopped there, got that large, and then it stopped. So that I didn't lapse into coma, I didn't become an imbecile, I didn't become a vegetable, which they expected. And Walter was told that night when he left the room for viewing the x-ray that I would be dead by dawn. I would never see sunrise. And of course, well, it's like a street accident. I was giving a concert. I was about to go on the stage lecturing. And it happened right there in front of the whole company. I said, come, let me give you the curtain calls. And I said, I feel tired. I don't feel like giving you curtain calls. I'll do it in the intermission. And then I said to one of the young dancers, new one, I said, I'll sign your contract so you're legal. I picked up a pen and I couldn't write. And the pen fell from my fingers then. I said, you know, it's very funny, but I can't write. And then I said, you know, I can't feel in the right hand. And I had so little acquaintance with all of this sort of thing that I thought, well, this is very interesting. It's simply fascinating. But I don't know what's the matter. However, somebody better do something. And you know what I actually thought was, remember all this, it's very interesting. Well, after a while I said I can't feel my leg either. And Mary Green, my great friend, said, but you're moving your leg. And I said, well, I may be moving it, I can't feel. Then I felt cold. Then I said, you better get a doctor. And when he came, I said, do something fast. I'm on the stage in less than an hour. I've never been late. And it's a 2-hour lecture without notes, and I did lecture without notes. And with cues for music and everything. He said, lean back, and the ambulance men had me. And do you know, within 45 minutes, I was drooling and babbling that fast. And it's, you know what it's like? It's like drumhead execution. The panic and the rage and everything that came over me was, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, I haven't done the thing right, I haven't finished any of my work, I never did a really good piece of work, I've had this whole life, and I'm going out right now, and I'm not ready. And Walter, of course, was in just profound shock. Well, the next morning I sat up and was eating breakfast out of the side of my face with the left hand, and sliding a spoon in somehow. Because this whole side was paralyzed. But it's the suddenness of it. And that, I heard a terrible story of a friend of mine whose mother was living alone in London, and she had a stroke and she lay on the floor of her kitchen for 2 days. She died of it later, very soon. But you know, I don't think older people should live alone. They should always have someone to come in and out. And I don't care how independent, I don't care how able. It's too risky. And the reason I had it was because I had been living at too high tension and very worried about various things. And I'm a quick-tempered girl, and I just like this all the time. Builds up, pressures.
If the doctors could be so wrong about your living through the next morning, how can you trust them about anything else?
I trusted them.
I know several cases of that.
What choice do you have?
Who've been told that your husband or wife won't live the next day, both with stroke, 2 cases I know of. And they did, in fact.
Well, you know, doctors have to say these things by the law. Various things are done. At one point, the doctor said to me, "You're going to have an operation tomorrow morning, but you can refuse it. It is dangerous." And I said, "Dangerous, dangerous. You know, get me out of this mess." So we had it, and it was ferocious. But I said, "Why'd you tell me that?" He said, "I have to. It's law. You have to give the patient, if the patient's conscious, you have to give the patient the choice of doing it, not doing it, as though the patient had any judgment."
How do you, the last person who could make that choice, I think, or decision
Well,
at that
I think
point.
he also spoke to Walter, you know.
Yeah. You are doing or have done a book on the subject.
It's coming out in September.
Yeah, September of '81.
But it isn't the whole book, it's only the first part. The first part deals with the actual stroke and the recovery, the beginning of the recovery in the hospital, and the whole hospital experience, which is very interesting, and of course, variety of different things, and that's that part. And then the next part deals with my coming back into normal everyday life and joining the living.
Yes.
And that is, in a way, probably, I don't know whether it's exciting for the lay reader, but for all the people who've had strokes and their families, don't forget their families, they will have something to read about here. Because I have a whole list of do's and don'ts, what you mustn't do with a stroke victim, but also what the victim mustn't do. They must not lie back and just say, "Help me." And what you don't realize is that a stroke victim has to then pursue the technique and a way of living that is absolutely relentless energy. Comb your hair. Put the spoon in your mouth. Sit up. Try to walk. Whatever is possible. I'm not asking the impossible. With doctor's supervision. Keep trying. And it's so exhausting. I get so tired. I really do. And there was, you see, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't even hold a newspaper. And what's more, my eyes didn't track, so. But I couldn't hold it. It all had to be fixed for me. When you leave the hospital, of course, you leave all the charming people that are paid a great deal of money to just do nothing but look out for your needs. You get home, and there are people who want to look out for your needs, but they have other things to do. And you've got to remember.
You start over, really, don't you?
You bet your boots.
Yeah. Have you ever taken a computer or mentally tried to figure out how many minutes, hours, and days in the rehearsal studio result in 1 minute on the stage?
No, because it's impossible to do this. It depends on how your brains are and how the company is. That's why I won't be paid by the hour of the day, unless I'm just paid to re-rehearse or re-stage. When I do a new job, I take on the job as a lump sum, and then I can give my life blood, and all day, all night, or how little it needs. I've worked and worked and worked, and with the company, sweating their bones out of their skin, and for garbage. And then suddenly, bang, the funeral dance in Brigadoon I did in 2 hours. Just bang, like that.
Just flowed.
But I was ready to do it. and the dancer was ready to receive it. And I did it, and then I said to the dancer who was there, just remember what I did, please, because I never, when I'm in the creative, that's a big word, but when I'm in the creative mood, or the vein, or whatever you call it, no, that's the wrong word. When I'm doing the exercise of creation, I'm not doing the exercise of analyzing and criticism. That's quite a different side of my brain. And you can't use both at once. It's like those things that automatically shut off in the body. Yeah. When you swallow, you can't breathe. You know? Yeah. Don't try.
Epiglottis or whatever.
That's right, bang. But if you're being inventive, you shut off all your analytic and critical faculties and let go. And the most surprising things come out. Sometimes they're good. And so this time I do. I generally have 2 or 3 people watching me because I say, that was good. Whatever it was good. What did I do? And then they tell me. Now this time I did the whole dance. And she said, I think I remember. There was no music, by the way. And I said to Trudy Rittman, who was there, do us a funeral dance. And she said, for the bagpipes, I don't even know what key they're in. I said, neither do they. Now you can just sort of pretend that there is a key. Now you see, the bagpipes are an interesting instrument because they're not in the key that we use in any other instrument in the West. And they can't, therefore, be incorporated into any orchestra. They're alien.
I didn't realize that.
They're an enemy of musical instruments.
So they have to be solo or
by
nothing.
themselves,
I mean, alone.
And that's just as well. And there they are, skirling and whatever they're doing, screaming and droning. And it's a remarkable sound, and it isn't quite music, but it makes your blood run cold. So she said, well, I think this will approximate it. And she approximated the drone and so forth, and she made the tune. That is not an authentic Scotch tune, and Fritz Lowe was appalled when he heard it. He didn't like the dance either. They thought it was the deadliest thing he'd ever seen. But now in that, it's all right, by the way, it works. That dance was done immediately. There have been other moments in ballets that have just gone fast, so you can't tell.
You talked once before about choreographer's block. There is such a thing, apparently.
Constantly.
Nothing comes. So I wonder what...
Well, it was like writer's block.
Sure.
Like anything. Or like when you're trying to talk and you just say, I forgot what I was saying and I don't want to say it anyway. Now, you cannot control the mind that way. You can control the mind if you've prepared it. And you prepare it by saying, if I get a block, then this is where I'm going. These are the milestones. These are the hurdles.
Yeah.
But that's pre-preparation.
Well, can you fool the dancers into thinking you're not blocked, or do you just admit it and...
They smell it. And then you know what happens? They're awfully polite, but they just sit down on the floor. And the moment they sit, and then you get panicky, and then they smell that. Then the cigarettes come out. Otherwise, they're right there, right alert.
What's the best thing to do? Go home, shower, and nap, or...
Depends. Each dancer has a different thing. Martha Graham used to just think while the dancers waited around. I can't do that. I'm so conscious of their boredom, their impatience. I just don't think of myself as, you see, a goddess.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be genius.
It would be nice to have that confidence, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it would help. Yes, in moments like that, it would.
Yeah. This may be an impossible request, but is there any way that you can trace one of your works, like Rodeo or Fall River, from concept to opening night?
Well, Rodeo took years, and I started it in London with a group of girls, and they were Western dancers, and I figured out, I worked there with them on their bodies and mine, Western riding movements. I worked for a year or more, and I did some of them in a recital. I have pictures of them, Peggy Van Prague standing up beside me. She's the head of the Australian ballet. She founded that, you know. But we wore culottes, rather big pants, and colored shirts, and the Western neckerchief. And then that was all, and there was no sense of there being either men or women. They were centaurs. And the idea was just to get the movement. This is when I was trying to get movement.
Yeah.
And I invented the whole of the movement.
Are you a Western rider, or did you do it just from visual memory of
My dear, horses terrify me. Well, cows terrify me.
Really?
I don't like quadrupeds. Well, dogs I don't mind. But no, I can't. Horses, they smell me. They smell the fear, they smell the dislike,
Yeah.
and they rush for the nearest barbed wire or the nearest low branch of a tree and rub. I have been,
So you have been on a Western horse. You know what cantering feels like and
sort of.
looks like. And
I don't know that I stayed on long enough to really get to know. I used to be mad to ride when I was a child. You see, there's cowboys all around. But
what was the next step then after you got the...
well, then I got that. Then I came to America and I did a suite here with also. And it wasn't very successful, but I sort of felt I was on the way. And then I thought it would be nice to do a ballet about the taming of the shrew, Western style, a girl that wouldn't be broken to saddle. And she wouldn't have the conventional woman's life. And the man had to smash her down. And that's the way it started. And then the Ballet Russe said that they wanted, it was during the war, they wanted a ballet on American subject done by an American. This was unheard of. They'd always been Russians. And so I was chosen. Now, Sergei Ivanovich Denham, who was the boss, hadn't the faintest idea what I'd done or what I was. I was at such a point of desperation that I was very snotty, I was very sassy. Martha Graham saw me on the way to the meeting and she said, "You be arrogant. That's the one thing they understand. They won't know what you're talking about. But be arrogant, Agnes. They can understand this. They consider themselves God's dancers and that nobody else knows anything." And it's perfectly true. They do still. But, which reminds me about Baryshnikov, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute.
Okay.
But the thing was, I told him the story of this thing and that I wanted to do it and so forth. When I got it figured out, and I told Aaron Copland, he said, "Who should we have composed?" And I said, "Aaron Copland." He'd never heard of him. I said, "He's the best in America, and you'd better have him." And so he said, "All right." I think Aaron did it for $1,000. I did it for $500, and it was 5 months, you see, work. Pull the curtain up. I think they gave me an extra $100 for an extra week and a half of work, because I was really hungry. But it was awfully heavy work. For the opening night performance, which I had 22 curtain calls for, as I told you, I got $15. Really. That was the AGMA minimum at that time.
Oh.
And they didn't want to give it to me.
That's amazing. No, I guess not.
Well, my dear, go read the history of unions.
Mm-hmm.
However, I wanted to do the ballet. Of course, I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't wanted to, but I did want to. And that, then I began to work it out. And when I had men, real men's bodies, men's strength, my God, the excitement. I can't tell you, I'd never worked with men. I'd had Hugh Lang as my partner, pantomimist. He had a certain amount of technique, but not too much.
Yeah.
But here were the Russians. I remember Freddie Franklin's shoulders, his arms, his back, when I put my hands there. I said, "Can you lift me?" He said, "Can I?" Oh, I was like a baby going up in the air. Shrieked with delight.
And that was all new to you?
I never had it.
Yeah.
And when I stood on stage, I remember, this was a lovely moment. I'd always faced that blank curtain alone, with a pianist alone. And there I was, naked before God and the world, alone. But now there were brothers right across the stage, all standing there ready. And better dancers than I was, I can tell you. And I thought, I'm not alone. We do it. We did it, by God.
A good feeling.
It was lovely. Mm-hmm. It really was.
We talked about American Ballet Theater, which is been a home for you in many ways, and Lucia Chase and so on. I guess it's too early to praise Baryshnikov's, because as we sit here now, he's only
Well, I haven't seen the company yet.
begun to.
Well, I will go, of course, they're going to do Rodeo, and they're doing it with Ruth Meyer, who's excellent. I've seen her in rehearsal, and I've always wanted her to do it. Lucia wouldn't let her, but now she can do it, and she is making a great success of it. It's a very beautiful translation of the role. She's a rather larger girl than I am, but she's a homely girl, in a sense. She plays it that way. And it's a really passionate, homely, awkward buckfish that is trying to get on with the men because she wants to beat them at their own games. Well, this is so like the way I was, I can't tell you. And people think, oh, she's hoydenish. I mean, probably a lesbian. It wasn't that. We didn't trust our feminine graces. I used to say to a boy, do you want to feel my muscle? Well, I didn't pull this, I didn't have one. I'd say, do you want to feel my muscle? It was in my leg. Well, they didn't want to feel it that way at all. And they didn't want to feel how strong my back was. Well, of course, also it gave them the delicious sensation of they're having their hands on my back.
Yeah.
But still.
But most men aren't attracted to women's muscles, and.
Took me quite a long time to learn that. And I wanted to do better. I used to take every boy I knew out on the tennis court and beat the living bejesus out of him. They never came back. Except one boy. He never lost to me, ever.
Who was that?
Well, a lovely boy named Mark Hubbard. He was killed in the war. Japanese, I believe they tortured him to death. But he was a lovely boy.
You were telling me about, you were going to say something about Baryshnikov.
Oh, yes. He was talking the other night, and so well, I thought, about the way that Mariinsky does the ballets. But I don't think Baryshnikov knows or is aware quite that the Mariinsky does not do them correctly. You see, when the Soviets took over, they had all this tremendous repertoire of Petipa and so forth, Ivanov, marvelous ballets. They didn't keep their hands off them. They didn't keep their hands off anything at all in the art world, as you know. And they just manipulated everything to their ideas of what would be better, higher, stronger, more terrific. And they changed the choreography. They changed the style. In many ways, the real style, well, it's all, in a way, guesswork, because we don't know exactly. But the old White Russian came over with Diaghilev, and they got stuck in England and France and so forth, and they kept the ballets as they were known in the Imperial Russian Ballet School of St. Petersburg and Moscow, and they trained the Royal Ballet people, and they trained the Danes. Now those two people do it in the old way, these Petipa ballets, but the Kirov ballet now in Leningrad does not do it correctly, and the Moscow less correctly.
Because of Soviet.
Yes, but their tastes are vulgarized. They haven't got pure taste. That's one of the faults.
Why wouldn't Baryshnikov know that? He's too young to know that?
Well, he's just a pup. He's 30 years old.
Yeah.
He grew up with the Soviets,
Yeah.
Soviet school. I'm sure this is the way they did it in the Mariinsky, but it isn't the old way.
One thing that every high school newspaper interviewer asks someone is, what are your hobbies? But do you have any hobbies?
Well, I do, but they're very peculiar.
I want to know.
I don't play games, you see. I don't play any. When people say, what do you do for recreation? I write a book or something. Now that sounds, ridiculous, but it is recreation to me. It's relief and so forth. I read, of course, but, well, first of all, I like to garden. Now, when I say that, it is a ridiculous remark because I don't know a thing about growing plants. I like to see them. I like to count on them. I like to buy the plants. I like to pop them in the absolutely unwelcome earth. We up in the country, we live in a forest. It's a real forest. It didn't used to be, but it's grown up to be a big forest, which means the soil is acid. We have such blooming laurel and rhododendron in the summer that Kew Gardens is hard put to it to match it. It's superb. The huckleberries, the woods are white now with the blossoms. They'll be blue with the fruit. That's all, you know, they're wild azaleas. But anything else is a real sporting risk. And I take that risk, and I keep planting, and I keep popping them in, and they come up smaller and more spavined and more spotted than any other known plants in captivity. Now that's only the first hazard. The second hazard is wildlife. We have wild deer that are voracious. Anything that comes over a fence or through the wire, boom. And then we have woodchucks that they'll dig under paving stones, they'll dig under wire. And I sit there watching for them. And it's a game between me and the wildlife. Or sometimes a lily does grow.
What do you do when you catch these woodchucks getting in
The
your garden?
woodchucks are disposed of.
Oh.
But my son shot one, and I never forgave myself for asking him to use his brand new shotgun. The woodchuck was caught in a trap. But, I ran down the road and could get away from the sound. Sound's nothing but a pop, as you know. And, but then I saw the body going bump, 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 bump by the caretaker. And I had started the whole cycle of disintegration and death. And I saw what it, Jonathan didn't like it, I didn't like it. I love the flowers, but, well, I wish they'd just go away.
Woodchucks.
But the deer, they keep saying, well, you must do something about the deer. What can you do about a deer with those eyes, those globes, their pale lashes?
Deer are like great dancers, aren't they? Some of the movements they make are simply breathtaking.
Yes, they are. But the main thing is when they jump on those little tiny pointed hooves and the ankles just like so, right up out of the bracken and onto rocks. And I don't think they ever break their legs. And have you know the sound they make when they're frightened?
No.
Oh, when the mother's out with the does, and we have them, I tell you. I've told you that we're in the forest. We're in the forest. We have bear, too. But the deer has her does, let's see, and they're going around eating my best flowers and eating off the vines, eating all the new growth, eating the leaves, eating whatever. And then I do something like move suddenly, and the mother's head comes up, and the white tail goes up, you know, the flag. And then she says, ha! And every small animal disappears. Bounding.
Never seen that.
That's the sound.
Gee. I didn't know they could make a sound.
That's the sound they make.
The cough of a deer or whatever that is.
It's a cough.
It's more than a
And then with the tail, the flag. And I guess that's for the young people to have something to follow.
How
The
else?
other hobby I have is costumes. And I'm an amateur, but I do know as much as most of the people around, costume designers know. And since I was a little girl, I've been fascinated with them. I wrote a costume book at 8, which was copied, of course, from something else, but I learned the costume. And then as a child, I took all my spare money and bought costume books. And there was a book dealer in Hollywood said, somebody came in and said, Agnes Mille's having a birthday, we need a book. He said, not a costume book, I will not sell another one for that girl. Not another. But I have a tremendous library on them. I really do. And I learned them. When I went to college, I thought I would take a course in it. They didn't know any more than I did. You don't have to know much, you just look. Now the thing is, I couldn't ever collect them because I couldn't pay the money, but I collected ribbons. I have boxes of old ribbons, even back to the beginning of the 19th century. And they're so beautiful. I don't know what to do with them. I have laces, of course, but I'm going to do a lecture on them, I think, because I'm so fascinated. It's going to be called Clothes, and it's going to start with 2 naked girls, as naked as the law allows, and the girls will permit.
I think the law allows naked now, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think my dancers would.
Oh.
However, it's as good as. And you will see the growth in the skeleton, the better teeth, all the improvements. And then the stance, the regular stance of a woman of 1850 and a woman today, it's quite a difference, you know. And of course the women of 1855 practiced distortion, real distortion, because of the corsets. And that was a distortion. And that was tolerated for 400 years in English-speaking countries and Europe. We don't anymore. It's gone. Nobody knows a corset now. They've never seen one. They've never been in one or anything. But we today have a form of distortion. And what do you think it is?
Shoes? No.
That's the same.
I don't know.
Starvation. What do you think?
Starvation.
Why, the women are all underfed. The fashion
Right.
models. All the fashionable young women. And the dancers.
Yes, some of the
There
fashion.
isn't such a thing as a pair of bosoms in the dance world
Yeah, is that forbidden in the dance world?
today. Today.
By whose edict?
Guess the choreographers and the producers. They have to be so thin.
Yeah.
I think all the fatty tissue is gone. Now, I think medically they can still suckle their young, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But there aren't any of these so-called delights.
No, and
Gone.
fashion pages look like a textbook on anorexia nervosa.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're about to close, I guess, but
One thing I
wanted
think they asked me to tell was where I was born.
Let me guess. Looking at you, I would think probably somewhere in New England. Am I close?
No.
Surely not Nebraska.
No.
Am I getting cold?
Colder every minute. I was born in 357 West 118th Street, New York City, the heart of Harlem.
You were born in Harlem?
Yes, sir. And it was a very nice middle-class neighborhood, a very nice one. And I learned to play by rolling hoops and playing hopscotch and whatever little girls play in Morningside Park, which is now the most dangerous piece of ground in New York City. And it's the absolute hangout of drug addicts and muggers and God knows what. Your life is not worth a damn in that park now. And it's too bad, because it was lovely.
Is there a plaque on the building?
No, Mayor Koch said he'd put one up, but I think he's neglected to,
No one
among other things in Harlem.
Yeah. Who, before we go, who have been the great interpreters of your work? Do you have favorites?
Oh, sure. Well, Jem DeLap, Jim Mitchell. And then in the ballet world, the best girl I think was Christine Sari in Rodeo. And then the second best was a Bostonian named Bunny Wyckoff, just adorable. But there have been quite a few.
Yeah. Well, even at this length, this is only a fragmentary recollection of your great career in life. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for submitting to it.
Thank you very much for helping me.